But I know that a lot of folks are here to talk about the squatter issue, which is, as I mentioned, other than the rat and lungworm, the other top priority issue for me this year, because it's affecting a lot of us in Puna. It's been a frustrating problem. I'm not sure where we should start. Mitch, would you like to say something about this, or should we hear some residents? Is there any residents here who came to discuss that? Why don't you take a minute or two, if you would, sir. Stand up, and if you want to come to the microphone, tell us a little bit about your experience. I think it would be useful to hear a couple of case studies. Yeah, why don't you come over here? If you could summarize in a minute or two, tell us the problem you're facing. We'll have a few people do that.
Hi, everybody. My name's John Up. I'm here with my wife, Paula. And we've had a squatter issue now for about 8 months. We have a gentleman that oh, can you hear me now? Okay. That claims he has papers. He's basically a felon. The police know all about him. He's been in there for 8 months. He faked up a lease so he could get Helco to turn on the power. So he's got power, but he's got no water. So now we have 8 months of not only him, but all of his criminal friends using the bushes for a bathroom. It's a health issue. 18th Street in Kaloli. HPP.
Pardon me, people tell their stories. And then
so we've gone through with the police, and the police have basically said their hands are tied. There's not much they can do. The issue is these people can come here, and they can look in a newspaper, find a foreclosure, go look at it. If it's empty, they can move right in. They call Helco. They provide them with a fake lease. Now they got power. And until, the way I understand the law, until that foreclosure is complete, the title is muddy. It's not clear. Until you change that to where the person that's going to get the house in the foreclosure, whatever bank, financial institution it is, should have the power immediately, not waiting for a foreclosure to close, to evict who's ever in there. Because this way, these people get in there and they stay. And then all their criminal friends start walking up and down our street. We had to call the cops the other night at 1 o'clock in the morning because 2 people didn't like what we put up on a Facebook page called Big Island Thieves, which, by the way, if you're on Facebook, that's a good area or a good page to keep yourself informed. What's going on in our neighborhoods? A lot going on. Anyway, until that law is changed, it's going to be an issue, and they know it.
My mom and my sister and brother-in-law live in Leilani Estates, and across the street and 2 drives down, a woman used to own the house, but then she somehow disappeared, so she was gone for several years. And then people started squatting in the house, and they'd have parties, and they'd, be entering, like they'd come up into my mom's yard in the middle of the night or early in the morning looking for a ride to Pahoa or whatever. But what happens is when my sister and my brother call the police, they say, well, you're not the owner of the house, so we're not going to come out. So the owner of the house has been missing. She's a missing person. But so...
Thank you. These are typical of the stories I've heard. Most oftentimes, it's a drug house. I mean, honestly, if a poor family that just needs shelter moves into a foreclosed house, no one's going to really care. The problems come when it's an ice house or something like that. Jal, did you want to? The other typical thing that I hear about this story is it's a house in foreclosure, and therefore you can't get an owner. Absentee owners are part of the issue, but when the bank owns it, you can't get anyone at the bank to take responsibility for it. And so, the sheriff's department and our police cannot take action unless the owner complains. So that's a little catch-22 that we're stuck in, and that's the problem that we're going to try to find a way to solve. Yes.
I've helped 10 people move into homes that have no owner, now, or they have 2,500 owners. And in order to foreclose, sell, or do anything else with a home, you have to get every owner to sign off on the action. And because some of these homes were securitized, they were bundled together with other notes from mortgages for an income property. People all around the world own parts of these houses. Now, the people that I haven't put into the house, I help them find them, and they research them, make sure there's no owners, nobody that's owning them. These are houses that were empty. One woman was an alcoholic. She no longer is on the streets, gone to rehab and helped herself improve. Several of the people that I helped were veterans. We have a possibility of using some of these homes. Now, when someone moves into your home, I'm sure Mitch Roth will tell you this, it's not a police matter. It is a civil matter. You have to get them evicted by a district court. Then you can get, I don't know if the sheriff's department comes out or the police, but then they can be evicted. But you have to have that, and it takes about 3 months. It is a shame. But the reason that the state legislature passed that law was because the non-judicial foreclosures were being abused so much by the banks and the investment companies. It's not right that people should squat, but the people that I've helped are not squatting, they're homesteading, and it's allowed by the state constitution. Yes, they are.
Okay.
It's called adverse possession. It's called adverse possession, and it's allowed.
Okay. Thank you, Del. I mean, obviously, that's a different perspective than what I think most people who have contacted me about this issue are struggling with a drug house in their neighborhood that causes real problems. They have burglaries. They see their own stuff go down the street in the back of a truck, and no one can seem to do anything about it. And so let me ask Mitch Roth to come up and speak a little bit on this subject. And I have asked, in addition to Mitch, let's bring that up a little bit further. We've been in contact with the Attorney General's office, Michael has, and we've been asking Mitch to give us some assistance. I also encourage the Sheriff's Department, who are actually on the front lines in most of these situations, to help us understand what keeps their hands tied when it comes time to do something about this. I'm trying to find a solution. We have 2 months to draft a bill. And I'm trying to get a bill that will be effective, that will allow the sheriffs to be effective when they go there, allow the police to be effective when they go there, so that neighborhoods are safe. That's the top priority here.
Aloha. I am not Russell Ruderman. My name is Mitch Roth. For those of you who don't know me, I am the prosecuting attorney, and boy, interesting things. We've been dealing with a lot of these squatter issues, and in a way, it really isn't the prosecutor's job to deal with the squatter issues the way we're dealing with them. But there are some misconceptions that I really want to real quickly put aside. So if you are getting money for putting these people in, you are committing theft. Okay, so we'll start there. We are prosecuting people who have squatted. We prosecute them for burglary. A lot of times they're breaking into the house, they're using things, and so we'll prosecute them for burglary. How can we do this? It's very, very difficult, and some of the things that were brought up, absolutely true. We have neighbors that are telling us that these people are squatting in this house. How do we know that they're squatting in this house? How do we know that they're not renting this house legally? Without knowing who the legal owner is, it's very, very difficult. However, one of the things I want to just introduce, Maurice Messina in the back over there. Hey, Maurice handles our asset forfeiture, and Russell, you're completely wrong on asset forfeiture, but that's another issue for another day. He is also...
I don't think I mentioned asset forfeiture. How can I be wrong already?
I saw it on your paper.
Okay.
Maurice has also been working with Bobby St. Ambrosio. Bobby, raise your hand over there. She's a volunteer. One of the first female chiefs in the nation. She's volunteering with our office. The foreclosure houses are the most difficult. If you're an owner, you can tell the police, these people are not supposed to be on my property, and we can make a case. We can either make a case for trespass, or we can make a case for burglary, or we can make a case for theft, or criminal property damage. There are options when we know who the owner is. The real difficult cases, as we've talked about, are these cases where the house is in foreclosure. People leave the house, kind of like what Dell's talking about. They leave the house, and we're left to figure out who's the owner. So the police get called. Hang on, Sarah. The police get called, And we say, they ask who the owner is. We don't know who the owner is. There is a way to find out, by the way. Let me teach you how you do this. The way you find out is generally you look at the tax map key. If there's a foreclosure, one of the things Maurice has been checking into a lot of these foreclosure houses, we started calling up the attorneys who do the foreclosures. There's probably about a handful, 10 of them, that do foreclosures in the state. We try to find the property with the attorney that's doing the foreclosure. We call up the attorney and say, will you give us permission? Because they are now their representative. Will you give us permission to have these people taken off the property? Actually, we give the police the permission to have them taken off the property. Sometimes that works. It really depends upon where they're at in the foreclosure process. You would think that the bank would be willing to do that. We had a drug house in Inola. They were dealing methamphetamine. It was a place where they were trading stolen property. A lot of stolen goods came through there. We forfeited the house. We tried to give notice to the bank. We found where the bank was. We told them that we want to give them notice of forfeiture. And they say, we deal with foreclosures all the time. You have to talk to our attorneys. Great, give us your attorneys. Call up the attorneys. They didn't even want to talk to us at that time. And so we actually were able to do a forfeiture on the house because they failed to answer. Now, generally, they would have a good faith owner defense, which is in the law right now. So we need to talk if you're looking at changing that. And we would get them off of the property. But it's very difficult dealing with the banks. One of the things we're talking with Senator Ruderman and hopefully with Rep. San Ventura Joy is this idea of maybe amending our nuisance abatement law. What is a nuisance abatement law? We have, first of all, a nuisance is something that affects the use and enjoyment of the land. There's things as public nuisances. For those of you who were here in Pahoa for the last 10, 15 years, we did, when we did our weed and seed site, one of the tools we used was the nuisance abatement statute to get geographic restrictions from some people from Pahoa. We did that, and then they started asking us about the buildings across the street from Cash and Carry, and we told them, we prosecute people, not buildings, but we did work together and got the buildings knocked down. If we were to change our nuisance abatement laws, and it's one of the things, if you read Senator Ruderman's pamphlet, he's talking about actually making these changes, then we may be able to do a nuisance abatement injunction, enjoin these people, in other words, kick them off of the land because they're not supposed to be there, give them a right to a hearing, and if they can make their case that they are legitimate owners of the land or they have permission from the owners to be there, then they may be able to be there. The way we do this, I'm not exactly sure. I know California last year passed a statute, and they do something very similar. So that is one of the solutions that we're looking at. We're looking at, again, when we find these places, especially the drug ones, if we know that drugs are being dealt out of these houses, we're looking at the possibility of doing a drug nuisance abatement to go in and get people out. We've actually on this island, over the last 15 years, we've been the most successful in doing these drug nuisance abatement actions anywhere else in the state. We did one behind Garden Exchange. We had 30 or 40 people that were kicked out, and crime in downtown Hilo went down about 90% and still really hasn't come up to where it was about 15 years ago. And so that is a real possibility. And as these statutes go through, we really need to, the devil's going to be in the details, look at how we're doing this so we're protecting innocent people's rights. One other thing I want to talk about also, because Del kind of mentioned something, and Senator Ruderman also mentioned something that kind of plays into this, and that's the homeless problem. Not everybody who is squatting are drug addicts. Some people are really down on their luck, and there are things that need to be done. A lot of the homeless have mental health issues, and really, this is a state issue that we need the state to take care of. Department of Health, through different areas. Unfortunately, what happens a lot of times, these issues get taken care of by law enforcement. Law enforcement is the last place we should be dealing with mental health and homeless issues. We should be more proactive than reactive. I just got back from a meeting at the White House last week, and we sat at a table with the judge from Miami-Dade, where they've actually moved a lot of these people out of the criminal justice system and started really taking care of them with crisis action teams. And so when these people who have mental health issues would get picked up, they'd put them right away into a crisis action team, take care of their needs, which allows them to get back on their feet, get jobs, find housing, and keep them out of the criminal justice system. They were able to take a big percentage of the people that were filling their jails and get them out of the system. So a second part of that is we as a state need to do a better job with people who are coming out of jails. You know, when people come out, we expect them to get a job and do well. Our state does a terrible job of having halfway housing, does a terrible job of mentoring people to get jobs so they're not going back on the street doing the criminal activities, squatting in homes like we're having now. So there's a lot of things we need to think outside the box and with different tools that we want a safer and healthier community. So I'll open it up to questions.
I greatly appreciate Mitch Roth being willing to come tonight, as well as the folks from the Sheriff's Department and the other people from Mitch's office. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. You being willing to be part of the discussion and part of the solution. And if I'm making a mistake on something I'm proposing,
Okay,
this is
we'll
why
talk
we're
about it.
talking about it now. We'll try to fix that. I want to do what you suggest, and what the people who are dealing with this issue suggest will allow us to make real progress on this issue. And I do second, again, if someone is living in a foreclosed house and not causing a problem to their neighbors, then who cares? Nobody cares. I mean, I'm not saying it's legal, I'm not saying it's what should happen, but the issues we hear about is when they're causing problems to their neighbors. It's usually burglary, annoyance, loud noise, aggressive behavior, and crystal meth. That's usually what it is.
Yeah.
QB, you had a question?
Money out of the house. A lot of people don't understand that the first half period of time you're paying on the interest, which basically is paying the bank. So the bank don't care nothing about that house no more. That's why they don't get involved and you can't talk to them.
Well, actually, they still have money to be made. And so when we talk to their attorneys and we explain that, especially houses out here in Puna, the house that we forfeited, it was terrible for a couple of reasons. That there was this whole thing that the state really dragged their feet on. And so we watched this house have its, not the cesspool, but the catchment. The catchment was stolen. A big catchment. All of the counters and all of the decorations inside, which really wasn't bad because we did test the house and there was meth all over the house, and so they probably did us a favor. But it took the state so long to do things that, doors, everything that was worth something was stolen. With every adversity, there's an equal or greater opportunity. I love using that story with the banks and say, look, you could sell this house and make, a couple $100,000. But if you're not willing to sell it and you just want to give it away, hey, we can turn it into a treatment facility. We could turn it into a place where, people are doing jobs. I think the men of Pa'a across the way, we wanted to give them a house for, what they're doing. Actually, we wanted to give them that house, and the fight lasted so long that, I don't even know what the state has done with this place.
Would you be willing to give it to people who are homeless, who can pay the taxes and pay the fees?
It's not my house to give.
And you try to find these things, you found out what it is.
We're able to find the banks. I would really be happy if the banks, if they didn't want to, they want to give that house and that property, if they want to give it to a needy family, one of the goals that we're working toward is to have no veteran homeless person on this island. I would love to give it to our veterans, because veterans...
And there's no reason why not, because the state constitution allows for adverse possession of real property.
Over 20 years. But it's still a bank's property, and we're not...
Only if they prove to the land court that they have a greater interest than the person who is there claiming it by possession.
But that's not very difficult for them to do, and they do it every day.
We need is no income housing. And one of the problems is the building codes that don't allow for very inexpensive, compromised housing to give a roof and sanitary facilities to these people. If we could somehow get the building department to cooperate and modify the codes to build low-cost housing for people, it would be a tremendous benefit.
It's a very important issue, and I do think that finally homelessness has risen to the surface as something we have to do something about. And I do think there's a will in the state to do something about it. And as I was talking about with ag housing, it's time to change our laws in that regard. But this is a separate issue from that. Well, let me ask you, Mitch, if someone has a squatter problem in their neighborhood, what should they do? Is it good if it's foreclosed, or if it's bad if it's foreclosed? And what's the first step they should take, and then what?
Well, first, if you can find out who the owner is, go to the tax map key, find out the owner. If you know who the owner is, call up the owner and say, hey, do you know you have these people that are squatting in your house? They're probably wrecking your house. They're definitely reducing the value of your property and your land. And it's a problem to us. If you can get them, talk to them, get them to give the police the permission to take these people off of the property. A lot of times, we find that they're renting the property. And this is how we really got into this whole nuisance abatement using it here, is that they're renting the property, and the people that are renting are using methamphetamine, and they're violent, and they're afraid of them, and they can't do anything about them. And most of those people, we find, don't have a written lease. So it gets kind of difficult. If that's the problem, if you have a drug house, you should be talking to the police, but find out who these people are. See if the owner can get them off first. Even if you have the owner's name and there's drugs going on, you should be contacting the police and letting them know, hey, we have a drug house over here. Can you guys do something? As a secondary part of that, Bobby and Mo from my office, you can contact them, and we start looking at these things so we can actually do drug nuisance abatement, or we can talk to the bank, or we talk to whoever it is to work on those issues. A lot of times those take a long time. It is not our core function at the prosecutors. I gotta really put this in. Our core function is, police make the cases, we take the cases to trial. But we've taken the position that it's better to be proactive rather than reactive. And so what we did with BAHOA, that is not core. That was community-oriented prosecution, working with the community, allowing the community to take control and put good things in, and we were there to help with the law enforcement part. So the first part is find the owner. If you're having problems, talk to the police. If that's not working, give either Mo or Bobby a call, and we will try to see what's going on. Sometimes what we're doing is we're trying to move the police along. We have some cases where, I know Renee's looking at me, we're trying to still move the police along to get the investigation to our office.
And Mitch, if it is in foreclosure, do they still call you, or do they?
If it's in foreclosure, and this is like a serious problem, Mo is keeping a list, and he's trying to get in touch with the attorneys who are doing the foreclosures. And when he finds them, He's trying to get them to give permission to the police to take action.
Okay, thank you.